Good morning, friends. I want to take you back to 1986 for a moment, and a song from the Christian singer Sandy Patty, and many of you might remember this song. It is called Love in Any Language, and the premise of the song is that love is the same in any language, even though the word itself is different. There have been a few times when I've been in cities where people from a number of countries were present. And as a result of that experience and observing different people from different countries and hearing different languages spoken, there are some things I can say that sound the same in any language. For instance, a child being reprimanded by their parents, a child letting their parents know they're unhappy, a husband or wife who's unhappy with one another, and also grumbling and complaining. Though I might not be able to understand the words, it's very easy to understand the attitude behind the words. Now, the past few times we've been together, we've been in Philippians chapter 2, verses 12 through 15. And this is what these verses say. So then, my dear friends, just as you have always obeyed, not only in my presence, but now even more in my absence, work out your own salvation with fear and trembling. For it is God who is working in you, enabling you both to desire and to work out his good purpose. Do everything without grumbling and arguing, so that you may be blameless and pure, children of God who are faultless in a crooked and perverted generation, among whom you shine like stars in the world. And in this passage, and specifically verse 14, we find the command to do everything without grumbling, without arguing. And we see that that is tied to accomplishing the goal of shining like stars in the midst of a crooked and perverse world. We're given instructions by the Lord, teaching us how we can shine among the world. And in this passage, it is tied directly to how we respond to challenges. And I wonder, what if we began our day asking the Lord how we might be a blessing to others? Maybe to our children or our grandchildren, maybe friends or those that we live around, or maybe those who are cast aside as well. And how might that impact our world and flood it with the light of Christ? Listen to what Jesus had to say about this. It's at the beginning of the Sermon on the Mount. Matthew chapter 5, verses 14 through 16. Jesus said, "You are the light of the world. A city on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on its stand, and it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before men, that they may see your good deeds and praise your Father in heaven." You know, there's even a song that might help you remember that. This little light of mine, hide it under a bushel. No, I'm going to let it shine. And did you catch the very end of that passage? Jesus said that they would see your good deeds and praise your Father in heaven. And certainly the assumption here is that there are good deeds, there are good works for people to observe, and that those who are receiving them will give thanks to God, even if they themselves are not believers. They will attribute your good deeds to your God. And I can tell you, I have personal experience with this. I'm not going to share the story right now, but this very thing happened in my life. And I wonder, since we're in the book of Philippians, did the Philippian church have any experience with this? I mean, they're the ones receiving this letter from Paul, and he's talking about not grumbling, not complaining and arguing, and how that will allow Christians to shine brightly in a dark world. Well, let me take you back to one of the charter members of the Philippian church. It's a man we know as the Philippian jailer. And the passage is Acts 16, verses 22 through 34. Listen to this story. The crowd joined in the attack against Paul and Silas, and the magistrates ordered them to be stripped and beaten. After they had been severely flogged, they were thrown into prison, and the jailer was commanded to guard them carefully. Upon receiving such orders, he put them in the inner cell and fastened their feet in the stocks. About midnight, Paul and Silas were praying and singing hymns to God, and the other prisoners were listening to them. Suddenly there was such a violent earthquake that the foundations of the prison were shaken. All at once the doors flew open and everyone's chains came loose. The jailer woke up, and when he saw the prison doors open, he drew his sword and was about to kill himself because he thought the prisoners had escaped. But Paul shouted, "Don't harm yourselves. We're all here." The jailer called for lights, rushed in, and fell trembling before Paul and Silas. He then brought them out and asked, "Sirs, what must I do to be saved?" They replied, "Believe in the Lord Jesus, and you will be saved, you and your household." Then they spoke the word of the Lord to him and to all the others in his house. At that hour of the night, the jailer took them and washed their wounds. Then immediately he and his family were baptized. The jailer brought them into his house and set a meal before them. He was filled with joy because he had come to believe in God, he and his whole family. Well, now, friends, we might be able to say that Paul and Silas had every excuse to grumble and complain and maybe even verbally assault the jailer. They were falsely accused. They had been beaten, and now they're thrown into the inner cell, the most secure part of the prison. They're in the stocks. But what if they had done that? I'm sure the other prisoners in that prison complex weren't very positive toward the jailer and towards the guards. And what if Paul and Silas had joined in the grumbling and complaining? How might that have hindered the message of the gospel? And instead we find them singing and praising God. And that shone like a star in the midst of that dark prison. You see, friends, our response to difficulty and the witness that we leave is just as important, even if the circumstances aren't as serious as Paul and Silas. Why would we want to make others miserable just because our day is going badly? How is that a right reflection of Jesus? So I leave you with a simple challenge. Well, it's simple to say, but it's one that requires the work of God in our lives to accomplish. When you wake up in the morning, ask this question of the Lord: how might the light of Christ shine through me today? You might not know how it will unfold on any given day, but if we are cognizant of that question, we will be ready to be used by the Lord to shine his light. And the outcome of that? Well, we never know how God will use a simple act of love to begin a new work in the lives of others. Thank you for taking the time to be with us this morning. I pray you have a blessed week. We look forward to sharing with you again next Tuesday. Goodbye.